It's Ron Reader digs the universe. I'm Ron Reader, and this is Ron Reader Digs the Universe. And tonight, everybody should listen to jazz. I was born in 1968, and in that world into which I was born, jazz was on its way out. Sure, jazz was still around at that point, as it is today, but it had lost around a decade earlier its absolute dominance as the popular music form in America. Rock and roll, along with the creation of the adolescent consumer market, all but replaced it. Amateur music, played at first anyway by amateur musicians for unsophisticated amateur audiences, allied itself with baby boomer counterculture, and quickly jazz became music that your parents listened to. So for me, in the early 70s, as a little boy first experiencing music, trying to get a handle on what it is and what I like, jazz was everywhere and nowhere at all. Speaking of your parents, my dad would listen to big band records from the 40s every weekend. All of my media consumption was impacted by jazz. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was accompanied by light, ethereal piano jazz, very reminiscent of what Bill Evans was doing in his work with Miles Davis back in the late 50s. Sesame Street had some jazz. Indeed, film and television scores of the era were densely populated with jazzy music. Think Barney Miller or Taxi or Taxi Driver. For that matter, jazz great Quincy Jones, who orchestrated, arranged, and wrote the Sanford & Son theme song. Quincy Jones produced Michael Jackson's awesome album trilogy, Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. Jazz was just all over the place, influencing pop music discreetly from Stevie Wonder to Billy Joel, everywhere and nowhere. I might not have seen jazz's greatness at first, but I certainly felt it, and it felt cool. Jazz musicians created cool. Without jazz, there would be no cool. From Hef's sophisticated penthouse jazz cocktail parties to the Beat Generation's deep embrace of the form as spontaneous literary inspiration to jazz's association with abstract expressionism in the art world, this music was as at home in intellectual environments as it was in whorehouses. No, really, whorehouses. Jazz was created at the turn of the 20th century in Storyville, New Orleans' one-time red light district. When moralizing prohibition forces got the district shut down, unemployed jazz musicians got on riverboats and headed up the Mississippi looking for work. And that's when jazz took over. Kansas City, Chicago, and then New York. And then the world. The discotheque. Later the disco here in the United States, but it arose in Nazi-occupied Paris. For jazz, an underground act of cultural resistance, listening to race music under the very noses of the superior race. The Japanese fully embraced jazz after World War II, where it is still very popular to this very day. Jazz evolved over the years from its original New Orleans sound to swing and then bebop, cool, and hard bop. It incorporated new sounds and rhythms from Cuba, Brazil, and Africa. It even brought that upstart rock and roll into the fold when Miles Davis created fusion in the late 60s. Jazz is a crazy hodgepodge of styles that works and makes sense. To me, jazz is absolutely the very best of 20th century America. It is a wildly successful integration of black and white cultures, both the music itself and the people playing it. It is a form that, like America ought to be, is both disciplined and free. Jazz is always looking forward, always progressing, but also always respecting its elders, always building on what it has built before without tearing it down first. Jazz is modernity. And I am a modern man. Down in the text box below this video, I'm linking 4 jazz albums that continue to blow me away. Herbie Hancock's Maiden, Voyage, Dexter Gordon's Both Sides of Midnight, Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, and Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald's Ella and Louie. You need to click through and let these records astonish you. Because everybody should listen to jazz. It's America's classical music. I'm Ron Reeder, and this has been Ron Reeder Digs the Universe. Join me, Ron Reeder, again next week for another episode of Ron Reeder Digs the Universe.